Connie, welcome to Strength and Movement, the podcast.
Yeah, I like how you do this. Not, hey, Connie, you want to come on my podcast? Hey, I want you to meet my buddy Danny. Just come on over, and we'll meet up. And I'm like, well, where do you want to meet up? Oh, we'll just meet up at his house.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I saw your
she
text.
Had no idea.
And you're like, I had to look it up because I was like, that sounds like a coffee spot. And I was like, does she know what we're doing?
No.
And I was like, you know what? I was at dog training for our dog, and I was like, all right, someone will correct this. Chris has got it.
Yeah,
no. Like, okay.
I didn't even say anything.
So hi guys, I've prepared for this podcast for a while now, just so you know.
I'm kind of a organic, raw type of guy anyway, so.
Me too, but
I kind of like it.
I could have worn something nice to this professional podcast, or
awesome.
it's
pretty laid
something
back.
like that.
We're pretty laid back.
So anyway,
we're in the beginning stages.
But thanks for having me.
Yeah. So basically, Strength Through Movement again is just to get information out from people who have experienced a lot of life, and I definitely respect you in that aspect of somebody who has experienced a lot of life and has a lot of knowledge. I guess just go ahead and start with what are your credentials? What did you study to get to where you're at right now?
Oh, that's a deep rabbit hole right there.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, how do I explain you? You're a trainer, nutritionist, basically, power lifter, triathlete.
A little bit. I haven't done triathlon yet. Whoa, hang
Cycling.
on. Just a second. I like to cycle.
Running.
I don't run. Unless I'm chasing something or it's chasing me. But I mean, so here's what I figured out. And this was a while back, probably in 2018. I started to figure out that the fitness industry had some holes in it, right? I know, surprising, right? But the fitness industry had some holes in it because you've got people telling these burnout moms that are doing crazy things to just eat less and move more and work out, let me train you for 6 days a week, and then you're going to reach your goals.
Right.
And then from the other side of the spectrum, which is where I originated at, was more the health and nutrition spectrum. So a little bit about me is in 2015, we changed our life by doing this extreme diet for one of our kiddos' health conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not only did this extreme diet help him, we all felt really good too.
Holy crap, the food I put in my body actually makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Or worse.
And I didn't consider us to be falling under that category of the standard American diet, right? I mean, we never ate out because that was expensive.
Yeah.
I would cook every single meal from scratch, and it would be like stir fry and spaghetti with some ground beef and things
easy.
I mean, your mom fed you that.
Super affordable and super easy to cook. Yeah.
I mean, your mom fed you that. It was good, right? You know? So, and meat and vegetable. And it always had to be the trifecta though, right? It had to be the steak and the potatoes and the roll. Don't forget the roll with the butter all over it. Yeah.
The Hawaiian sweet roll.
Yeah. It had to, yes. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Did you say Hawaiian?
The Hawaiian sweet rolls?
I didn't know that's what they were called.
Oh, you probably just see it when it's out of the package. Yeah. I'm the one that's I'm going to
read the lid.
I'm going to open these. Guys.
Yeah.
You guys.
So anyway, we changed our diet all the way around. At that particular time, I had been going on crash diets pretty much my whole life. And the funny part about this is I am an extremely active person. If you think I'm active now, you can think of me active the same way I am now, only at 197 pounds. So that was pretty much my life. I had big, huge legs, a 6-pack of abs, which was wild.
Yeah.
And then I was pretty, fit, but on the bigger side.
Built.
Right. And I hated it. And that's what we're trained to do as women, right? Is to hate anything that's not really, really skinny. I mean, when I was in high school, the trendy thing to look like was that anorexic girl. And if you had a little bit of a booty, you had to get rid of that. Now it's the other way around. Dang, I wish I was in high school now.
The norms, right? The norms, right? So the norm of what you're supposed to eat and the norm of what you're supposed to look like, yet those two things don't really coincide.
No. Well, so anyway, diving down this rabbit hole, we go on this nutrition journey. Within weeks, we start noticing things like my wrists don't hurt anymore. I feel really good. I don't have indigestion. My back doesn't hurt. My husband, that was his thing. His back hurt all the time. And granted, he has a job where he's, all huddled up all the time. But he was like, my back doesn't hurt anymore. I feel great. And I was like, me too. And we start noticing all these things. Sleep improves. Next thing you know, we both start melting. And he didn't really have a lot to lose in the first place, but I mean, we all start melting. Yeah. Kids acting better. People are like, man, Blake's doing awesome right now. We're like, yeah, this is interesting.
Been in a good mood.
And soon we find it sent me down this crazy wild rabbit hole because I'm a researcher anyways, and I start getting into this stuff, and that it's the rest is history. So that's where I live now. But then I notice I lose all this weight, right? So I was down to I started at 197 and I was down to about 112 pounds. I was super skinny. Yeah. But it didn't really look good in the mirror. And I remember looking in the mirror and being like, this is like soft and I don't want to look this way. And in my head, I wanted to look like this, like off of Baywatch, they're running. And I wanted that, nice glute medius. And I was like,
get the line.
And I had this talk at that time. I was into David Goggins and Jocko hardcore, right? And this is like 2018 by now, and I looked in the mirror and I had that like conversation.
Get hard.
I
wish Tristan was here.
He would be going on.
I like, listen to those guys as well, but
yeah,
I think he's brought up like Cam Haynes, all those people in the last 2 podcasts.
Yeah.
Shout out Tristan.
Sorry guys, here we go again. But at the time it was like, especially a lot of the things that Jocko said, they resonated with me because I was like, there is a piece to that where we don't like to go outside of our comfort zone. And we had gone way outside of our comfort zone with the nutrition and all of that kind of stuff, but I had mastered that crap. I mean, it didn't take long where I had it figured out. If you want something bad enough, you're going to figure it out. And that's the one thing I don't like about excuses. And we won't get on to that little escapade, but anyway, I looked in the mirror and I actually had the talk with myself for the first time in forever. And I had tried to be like fit, a lot of periods of my life, and a lot of them had
quote unquote fit.
Yeah. A lot of them had like running involved, which I don't know why do people choose that? But a lot of them had running involved.
I like to run.
And I always wanted to go to the gym, but I was like, I don't have time.
You can keep it.
Yeah, you
do the running for us.
Something wrong.
I'll be on the Stairmaster or incline 10 for an hour because that's what it takes to do 5 minutes of a run.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, getting into this rabbit hole, I start working out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. And it starts with something basic. And this basic stuff worked, I'm telling you. And this is where I've learned about people doing too much. This stuff worked. My morning routine was literally like 3 or 4 sets of squats, 3 or 4 sets of push-ups, 3 or 4 sets of sit-ups, and maybe some lunges. And that was it.
Yeah.
Every morning. My alarm went off at 4 a.m. Boom, that's what I did.
But that's the beauty of like the type A, the whole you set a goal and you do it.
Yeah.
You do it.
Mm-hmm. And the thing was, it wasn't hard. It took me probably a half hour tops. And that was when I started adding things. And I started adding, and pretty soon I'd go buy a kettlebell. And I got a kettlebell involved. Next thing you know, I'm on Instagram. I'm like, what can I do in my bedroom in 30 minutes?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, Facebook Marketplace. Oh, there's a bench. Well, let's buy this bench, Can
we move the nightstand?
Yeah.
Throw that in there? I can set stuff.
Kind of that's what happened. We had this office that we never used. And next thing you know, I'm getting rid of everything in there. I was like, hey, I told my husband and my brother, I was like, hey, I bought some fitness equipment. Would you go and pick that up for me? And my brother was making fun of me. He was like, oh, is that their new coat rack? And I was like, no, I'm going to use this shit. What are you talking about? And so anyway, it was a big metamorphosis. I went from having to have body part splits, and basically I prepped for my first bodybuilding show in my office.
Yeah. So this is back in 2018 still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So quick side note, actually, really funny story. I think I met you through Tracy.
2018.
Tracy was sponsoring us. Mm-hmm. And that was like way back in 2018. If I go, and we both kind of had the same view on fitness at that time. It was kind of like an awakening of like, holy crap, this is unhealthy.
Yeah.
People are super unhealthy. But I remember posting this, and I'm going to read it really quick. But you were the first one to comment on it, and you're like, yeah. And then we talked, and you're like, dude, I'm right in that line right now. I think the same exact thing. But I thought the industry was getting better, but it's only getting worse. More people are looking to get fit nowadays, but that's the problem. Fit is society's view and opinions on health, which is corrupted at some point by some vain narcissistic jerk that made health and wellness all about aesthetics. I was talking about Arnold. and all the sheep that followed it, because that's what is attractive to the eye. From that point, it creates unhealthy eating habits, starvation, and use of drugs to get this so desirable look. Well, of course, everybody took the jerk's advice because they wanted the attention, the glamour, and the fame too. The feeling of comfort and satisfaction from attention. Then more people took their advice, and so on and so forth. So now we're here, buying the supplements, the advice, and the products of the fitness industry. Sure, it's not all bad, but mostly. So instead of using working out and diet as leverage for true health and wellness, we have people ending up in a bad spot for going down a wrong path directed by somebody who is supposed to be a professional. Then, when they achieve this goal, they are left empty, wondering why they're not happy, then continually chase the wrong goals, ultimately becoming lost. So my advice to you, numb your mind and reset yourself by disconnecting from society for a bit, and then pay attention to why you are seeking your goals and why whoever is helping you is helping you. Would they give their shirt off their back without question, or with question to what's in it for them? So, I mean, I remember posting that, and that's dated, time stamped, September 29th, 2018. I was going through through a huge identity phase at that time.
Well, and I think that was where all of a sudden, and this was an evolution, obviously, it always is with all of us, but all this at that moment, I got into the fitness industry, but I also came from the health industry, and I wasn't stupid. And so I was researching everything, and I was looking at these women that are looking at women like me on social media that are effing peeled and like super muscular, and they're like, oh, I want to look like this. They don't realize you are sick.
You're sick. Yeah, you're literally sick. You're at an extreme and anything to an extreme, I believe, is bad because you will find a breaking point at some point, unfortunately. But in sports, that's an extreme.
And the sad part of it was, I thought I needed to look that way in order to, because I knew I wanted to help people, right? And I was like, crap, I got to teach these people that if they change their diet and they start moving themselves a little bit, and doing all these things, they could actually change their life, like mine. I mean, my life definitely changed. But there was this little flaw I had in my thinking, was I needed to look that way in order to get those people to realize I knew what I was talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Like, why would I listen to you? You don't look how.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just something you can't explain. You have to lead. Like, all right, hey, try do this, and then they start to realize, oh wow, okay, this really isn't about that little scale goal.
So
or whatever it is.
It was kind of weird because I had this like epiphany moment that kind of like merged, and then all the mindset parts came in, and the wheels started spinning, and I was like, what? But why do these women want to look this way? And why do they want to look like someone else instead of looking like them? And then like all these things like started happening, right? And then here I've got this coach at the time that I was working with, and she's like, well, the only way you're going to make it in the fitness industry is if you're an IFBB pro, you know? And so then next thing you know, I'm like crushing my body into the ground, trying to go after this goal that was probably not a realistic one from my body type, And I thought I had to get that in order to be wanted by the public.
Yeah.
And I literally, and I'm one of those people, here we go. We got the Jocko and the David, and that's my mindset. And I'm not afraid to go hard.
Going hard.
I went hard, and I went hard until I couldn't go hard anymore. And guess what? Everything ended. I crashed.
Yep.
And I think the saving grace with the whole situation was I got done with my last show, which my body would hardly respond. I looked terrible on stage. When people Google my name, that's the very first picture that comes up. And I'm like, it's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. But anyway.
At least you were really shredded.
I mean, I was peeled, but I looked like I literally looked like out of The Walking Dead. Like. Yeah, and I felt that way too. Yeah. But that's when I realized at that point, I was like, okay, how am I going to rectify this? Because I know all these things. I don't need a coach to tell me these things. I already know them. I've researched them. And that's when I started diving into the weeds on like, okay, well, I'm going to start fixing competitors. I'm not going to be the one training them. I mean, I will, because I'd love to save them from all these coaches that suck. But there's this other part. I can fix people.
When they come out of it?
And when they come out of it. Yeah. And then that's where I was like, okay, started getting into the weeds on adrenal health. And I had to do it for my own health too, because I go in and get my lab work done, and I was a mess. Like my doctor was like, and there were nights, I'm not even going to lie, when I went to bed, I thought I might not wake up the next day. That's how awful I felt. Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I literally told my husband that at one point, and he's like, we got to stop.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Like now.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even know how to stop at this point, because at this point you've got this expectation in the public eye of what you should look like. I mean, Connie's peeled all the time. If she gains 25 pounds, what are they going to think of me? You know?
Yeah.
And that's when I had this like, here we go. The mirror. There's the mirror of truth. We look in the mirror and we go, okay. I remember I looked in the mirror and I was like, okay, body, I get it. I've been a total asshole to you. I'm sorry about this. You know, yeah.
Sorry.
Let's make peace right now. I promise I won't do it again. Right? I promise. Here's where we're at. I realize coming out of this is going to be a shit show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I'm willing to give you the time what it takes to rebalance out. And that was the point that a lot of people don't get to, especially after we've got all sorts of facets of this, right? We've got bodybuilding, or that anorexic person, or somebody that has to heal, and healing revolves around gaining weight. Well, women don't really want to gain weight. I had to let my body gain 55 pounds in order to come back to homeostasis. And there was always that urge to be like, no, I'll just do more cardio, or I'll eat less, or I'll do, and every time I'd be like, nope, that's not the nice thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, like that is not the nice thing to do.
Oh yeah.
And I had to send myself down this rabbit hole now of what's metabolic repair look like? What does metabolic dysfunction look like? What happened within my body that caused everything to finally short circuit and have the shit hit the fan?
Right.
So that's kind of what I have gotten into now. So we kind of skipped the part where I'm a certified personal trainer, I'm a certified nutritionist. I've done thousands of hours of continuing education in specialty fields. So we're talking adrenal dysfunction, lab work optimization, women's hormone health.
Yeah, it's quick side note. Like on Instagram, when I was doing the whole what was it? 4 miles every 40.
Oh,
4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours and fast. And doing a cold plunge every 24 hours. I mean, that was my plan. I stopped to think, and I was like, I should reach out to Connie. Like, hey, what is going to happen here? She's like, you're going to crash your hormones. It's really not healthy at all.
I was like, do you like your
You're
testosterone?
going to get mentally strong, but there's really no benefit.
I mean,
all right, I'll quit.
It is so hard when we have a lot in common in that space, right? It's so hard when you're someone. I find myself in the dark place. I mean, if I shouldn't say bad words, but I find myself in that dark place. Yeah. Let me tell you what, it's my favorite place to exist. The harder I have to push and the more miserable I am, the more like the freaking sky parts and the rays of sunshine come down, right? Like I get that. And that's where it's so hard to find balance.
I agree though. I agree. Yeah.
And it's going to be that way the rest of my life. That will be my thing. What do you need to work on? What do you need to do to grow in life? Well, for me, it's called take a nap. Or like,
try something new.
Yeah.
Try
or
the other direction.
Go on a nice hike with your heart rate at 100 beats per minute.
Enjoy life.
And stop for 5 minutes and look at the scenery.
I've been playing the piano.
Wow, that's good. I like that. Yeah. So that's where all of a sudden I realized there's a huge gap here. So we've got, you throw away all the fitness stuff and you get into life and you look at what's going around you and you see not only women, but also men too. They're pushing too hard because they and usually they're overweight people that need to lose weight and they're overdoing it. They start with too much. They bite off more than they can chew. They're stuck in this perpetual cycle of I cannot finish this or I quit because it's too hard. Instead of doing something simple like making the bed every day. I'm just using that as an example, but I make my bed every day and that might seem funny, but it literally takes me like 2 minutes tops and I feel so much better when I walk in the room and I see that my bedroom is perfectly clean and my bed is made. And it's become a habit to like, for this morning, for the first time in probably 6 or 8 months, my daughter was in my bed and I didn't make the bed when I first got up. And we were in a rush and I was like, I'll just do it later. And then I was like,
you feel
I can't do that. It was weird. It was weird.
Yeah, you feel off. You're like, because you're ticking off that even though it's a small kind of trivial, basic thing everyone should be doing every day.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't, you're like, why do I feel weird?
Yeah. So people were doing too much. And then what I also noticed is this is a vicious circle, right? And I'll kind of preface this with like, so you have, for example, when you hear a lot and frequently is, I have hypothyroidism and so I'm overweight. But what if you're overweight or you have hypothyroidism because you're overweight? Yeah. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so you'll hear that as an excuse. Well, it kind of falls into the same place with fitness, right? Like you may not actually be needing to go as hard as there might be a cycle that has happened here. Have you been eating 1,000 calories for who knows how long and your body swung that pendulum back the other direction and now you've 10 pounds more than you were when you first tried to diet. So people go to these extremes. Well, what do extremes get us? They get us extremes. Exactly that. Whichever direction it happens to fall.
Right.
So that got me into this crazy hormone stuff. And so now I'm like, I still have to be a personal trainer. Because what happens if I mean, you're not this person, but what happens if I send you to Joe, the trainer down the road, right? And the trainer down the road has my client training 6 days a week, doing 45 minutes of cardio, but I'm trying to fix their adrenal function because their adrenal function is totally in the shitter from, who knows, that stressful job, new baby at home, whatever it may be. Maybe, and I know this sounds crazy, but maybe fitness 6 days a week is not for that mom.
Right. Yeah.
And we need to find out what healthy movement is for that mom.
Yeah, we talked about this, I think, on our first podcast or whatever, and like actually getting to know your client and knowing what they need versus what you want them to need. And that just goes back to all of what you're saying with the whole fitness industry. This goes back to relationships, everything, because as kids, we start to be taught from our parents and they tell us what we need. You know, they tell us how we need to act, and then society tells us how we need to act. And then by the time we're in our 20s, we don't even know ourselves. And then you get into a relationship and you're this person that doesn't know who they are. Then you start adopting your partner's identities. And then you end up 10 years down the road and you're like, I don't even know who I am. I don't like who I am right now. And then boom, you're in the wrong relationship.
Right. And so this is why I was like, I have to be a coach in general. So it's really hard to put myself in the box of I'm a personal trainer or I'm a hormone specialist. You know what I am? I'm a coach. I'm a life coach. Yeah. I'm a freaking nutrition coach. I'm a hormone coach. I'm a fitness coach. You name it. It has to be all encompassing. If your dog dies tomorrow, I have to be there to console you because guess what? This is a big picture. Yeah, it's a big picture. It's not one little thing. And so I have people reach out to me all the time. They're like, hey, will you just look at my hormones or can I just train with you or what's it? And I'm always like,
you look at their whole life and you're like,
hold on a minute.
I got one of you already. I gotta, give me some time.
Yeah. So it's so all encompassing when it comes to getting someone fixed. So to dive to the beginning of this podcast where you ask who I am, that's kind of it in a nutshell. I do everything. So,
and that's kind of why I wanted to bring her on because she's got a cool story. She's done a lot.
Yeah.
And right now, currently, I don't know if you want to talk about it because you're in a weird state.
Well, okay. So
even if we don't talk about it now, I need to.
Yeah, you put it out there. I mean, never mind, guys. We're not talking about it. No,
great podcast. Sorry.
Yes, yeah. So here's the thing. Once I realized I could do freaking anything, I could literally do anything. I stepped on a bodybuilding stage of 1%. Not 1% body fat, but 1% of people do it. Under 10% body fat. I could do that. Crap. I can do anything. Yep. I can literally do anything I want. And so then I was like, 150-mile bicycle races, cool.
Sure,
let's do it. This will be fun, And I mean, I grew up racing motocross at a pretty elite level, big sponsorships and stuff like that. And it was a lot, of fun.
She's done it.
I would imagine.
It was a lot. Well, my dad was a dirt bike junkie, and really, if you want to take it back to the roots, that was that. And like, I grew up on a farm. That and rodeo and horses was my thing, right? So currently, I'm dealing with maybe a potential neck injury. They don't know what's going on, but they're like, "Have you ever?"
From your horses?
Who knows? Yeah, not from the dirt bikes. They're like, "Have you ever had a neck injury?" And I was like, I've had like 7 concussions.
How many different times do you have the possibility that's a yes?
I was like, I always wore a Liat brace. I don't know if that helps. But, so anyway, but I all of a sudden got on this quest. Like, I wanted to show people, and this is such a unhealthy thing, right? But I wanted to show people that they could do anything that they wanted.
Same here. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
I know.
Like,
that's why I brought you on the podcast.
It's so cool because you know what it requires? It requires you doing it. That's what it requires. Yeah. Do you have to be the best? No, I probably have a complex. But when you're the best, that also makes it so that, you know, your friend watching you on Instagram sees you. I'm not talented. I mean, I'm like the least talented person in the world, but here's the thing.
You have a hard work ethic?
Well, I'm freaking bullheaded as shit. So I can do
Don't tell me I can't.
Anything. Exactly. You tell me I can't, and I'm going to be like, watch this.
Yeah.
You know? And that was the worst part of the powerlifting. And I know this is an awful thing to say, but we had a friend that he wants to be a powerlifter.
Mm-hmm.
Some people talk about it. Some people do it.
Yeah.
You know, when I started doing it, I had some people talk some smack, and the same with bodybuilding. And let me tell you, the first thing that you don't do with me is you don't talk smack, because I'm going to win. And I'm not going to just go and get second place, and I'm not going to go and just get... Anyway, I won the world championships powerlifting.
Boom. Congratulations.
In November.
That's awesome.
That's huge.
I set 3 national records in 2022 for bench press. Apparently, am okay at powerlifting.
Apparently.
And,
found out.
You found out.
Yeah. I found out. I mean, I'm not a good cyclist.
She's not talented.
I know I'm not a good cyclist. I can finish a 150-mile race. Will I be in the top echelon? Probably not. But I can finish. And that's pretty good.
But that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so, but I mean, I found out I'm okay at powerlifting. So that it was cool. And it was an amazing experience. And everyone's like, wow, that is so cool. And I'm like, let me tell you, I'm not special. You know what I did? I went to the gym every day. I did the work. I had my nutrition perfect. I slept perfect. If somebody was like, hey, you want to go out to dinner with us? I was like, no, I'm sorry. I got to sleep because I got to go to the gym tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, takes a lot of dedication.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have to take it to that level? No. But you can do anything you want. And I literally had a client. She competed in her first Spartan race this year.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And we had the most amazing conversation. She's like, well, I saw that you could do things. And I was like, I'm going to try it. She did a sprint and she was like, cool.
That's not as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, she did the super.
Nice.
Cool. Next thing you know, she did the beast.
Nice.
And she was like, Connie, I never thought I'd have a good career. I never thought I'd have any of these things.
Yeah.
And now I just did everything.
Yep.
I just did all of it. Just the coolest thing to hear her saying that, because she's like, now I think I can do anything I want. I think I want to powerlift now.
Cool.
So I was like, cool, let's do it.
And that's the thing, like going back to the whole identity thing. I don't think a lot of people do actually truly find their identity. They just keep living the norms or what they were taught. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where our negative attitude comes from. This is a dumb reference, but have you ever seen Trolls?
Oh, yeah.
And they got like all the grumpy old, you know. And, like, I feel like that's where we've gotten to because we keep doing things that we don't want to do.
Well, and let's take this down to a fundamental level too. Let's talk about dopamine for a minute, right? Mm. Okay. Boom. Dopamine hit. Yeah. Okay. You don't have to go out and get a medal at a marathon for your dopamine hit. It's right here.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, video games, food, these are all these dopamine hits. When I get my dopamine hits from winning shit, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
You know?
completing like, something.
Yeah,
big
from finishing something that's hard that you work.
Making the bed.
Yeah. Well, even I mean,
smallest of.
Dang, look at that bed.
Yeah,
like, damn,
I do too. And I mean, like, and I am this type A person. It's like when I walk into my office where I work every day at my house, I'm like, it's my safety space, and I happen to probably hang out in there more than I probably should. Because it's clean, it's organized, it's my spot, you know? So yes. And that's the thing where we need to learn as human beings, instead of doing things we don't want to do, let's get wins. Let's go out and win something. Yeah. And I'm not talking powerlifting. I'm talking win the day. I just won making my bed this morning, even though I wasn't going to.
Be conscious of it.
Yeah.
And people aren't being conscious of it. They're not saying like in the morning, I want to accomplish this and that today. They're not saying that. They're just like, all right, whatever's next.
Right.
Whatever's going to happen today. Not like, oh man, I want to make somebody's day today.
Oh yeah.
All right. Just anything, you know?
Even just writing it down too, if it's just the basic things, especially if you're some days where it's harder for me to just have that in my head of, I want to complete these things. Just writing it down and physically seeing you check it or exit off is here.
Your heart
the, like
just opens up.
The dopamine, you see it, even because sometimes, I mean, it's harder for you to get that release, I guess, from just having it in your head. And you complete something, you're like,
checking
okay,
it off.
but seeing it
physically
written, done.
I think that's gone out the
done
window too.
and checked.
And it's a huge thing. And I'm actually a lister too. So, I mean, you would never guess that, but, I mean, I have all of my stuff. I have a planner. I have it. And the night before I look at my schedule, I'm like, okay, I got Sarah at 9:15 in the morning, and then I got 2 check-ins, and I got this, and I still got to make it to the gym. So, and I write out what my day is going to look like. What is my schedule supposed to look like? What do I have to do during that day? Is there somebody I need to follow up with? I do a ton of online coaching. So do I need to check Carrie's plan? Do I need to do this? And I check those boxes. And I try, if I can, to check them from the top to the bottom. Because
you see it and you're like,
it's in order.
Sometimes I get distracted, a little bit of squirrel problems, and I get halfway through someone's plan and then move to the next. And I have to go back. And I'm like, why do I do this? Because it's because I get a squirrel moment. So I try to work it from the top to the bottom, but, putting a conscious effort, even when it comes to like, okay, so I have clients log food. Not necessarily because I care about the macros, because I want them to become aware of what they are doing. And some people are like, well, I got to the end of the day and I had 50 grams of protein I had to get left, and I was over 175 on carbs. And I said, okay, so start planning it in the morning. Be like, okay, I set out my breakfast. Here it is. I set out my lunch. Have it planned ahead of time. It's going to be so rewarding when you get to the end of the day and you didn't have to log that stuff. It's already there. You knew what you were going to do. You had it planned.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people go wrong too, is they don't plan ahead. They set goals, but then they don't plan the action. They don't plan the action, right? And then they don't follow through. So, yeah, I think with clients, that's like the first thing that I get on them about is like, all right, well, why didn't you follow through?
Right.
Well, you didn't plan it. You didn't write it down. Well, let's do a meal log. Well, I don't want to write down my stuff every day. I know what I'm eating. I know what I need to eat. I'm like, yeah, but are you eating it, or are you mentally eating it?
Right.
You said you eat it. You know what I mean?
Well, and I've run into this also. So I sometimes on occasion will have my local clients, though, I'll come over to my house and we'll do a giant meal prep together.
Oh, cool.
And there are the ones, and typically the ones that I see that are less successful than the other ones, I'm watching them. Everybody else is weighing their stuff on the scales and they're putting it all together. And we have the less successful clients. They're going through and kind of just grabbing a couple spoonfuls. They're like, oh, it's about a half a cup. Yeah. Or the one I really like is there's a tray of potatoes and like chicken thighs. They're putting it in their mouth as they're prepping it.
Count.
And
they weigh it. They cut it in half, eat it.
Yeah. I mean, no, I'm pretty sure it's getting eaten and then weighed. Like it's, and I watch that and I'm like, okay. So are they grazing at home? Like what's, so there's a lot of, there's so many things, right? And probably there's not a mental awareness of it.
Also going back to what is your why? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
If they're doing it to fulfill you, like, Connie told me I need to eat this, so that's what I got to do. And if they're not, then they skip and then they lie.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I don't want to disappoint Connie.
Right.
There's
some more rabbit holes you can go down with that. Because how many people tell themselves
that, and like at this point, I'm just like, I don't care what you say. I know what I put out works.
Yeah.
So I know there's a kink in the chain somewhere.
Yeah.
And we got to figure that out.
Well, and then that's now where we get into Connie's specialty, right? Okay. So for example, had a client recently. We had been working together to restore her metabolism for quite some time, maybe 6 or 8 months. We would kind of
which people don't understand that it takes that long.
It takes a long time. When we went on the GAPS diet, which was my initial health journey, we did it for 12 to 16 months solid. Yeah. So, and that's the recommendation for healing.
And people go, man, I've been doing this for a month and it hasn't done it.
Yeah.
You're like,
I'm like,
yeah.
How long weren't you doing it?
Right. Yeah. How long were you doing it? That's a good one. Yes. Well, so with this particular person, it was like, okay, well, I know what I do works. Now it may, but what else is going on that we don't know about? So with her, she was explaining some things that were kind of a little worrisome to me, but I was like, maybe it's habits. Like we were trying to restore sleep. We tried doing sleep realignments. Well, she ended up getting a 24-hour saliva test for cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got it back, her cortisol was flatlined. So she had been in a chronic state of stress for so long that it's basically what I call diabetes of the adrenals, where your adrenal glands are just like, sorry, we're done. And they stop making cortisol. Well, the problem with that is now your blood sugar.
Do you do those tests?
I personally don't specialize in those tests.
Yeah.
I can read them to an extent. I'm going to be... So it's very hard with what I do. I will be getting into that stuff and some GI mapping as well. But a lot of those tests, specialty tests, are about $500 a piece.
Yeah.
And the licensing for them is about $7,500.
It would be good to know, though.
Oh, for sure. And that I'm headed that direction. Like, actually, if my gym had
because then
flooded,
you could be like, it's going to take this long.
Yeah. Well, I had a pretty bad gym flood this summer that took me out a little bit business-wise and money-wise. I came home and I have a gym and my whole basement is a studio, which is way sweeter now. But my son came upstairs and he's like, Mom, there's water pouring out of the ceiling. Well, my whole gym was totally demolished. So anyway, I had actually down-regulated my in-person clients and I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to school and finish off the rest of this stuff that I think is necessary because I'm way into the weeds at this point. Anyway, long story short, the testing is really expensive. And at one point it gets to, the initial tests that I do with most people, because I won't work with someone really unless I have good hormone, solid hormone testing. Well, we had tested her hormones and her cortisol was pretty low in the morning, but it wasn't the worst I'd ever seen. And I was like, it's probably okay. Well, you figure over the metamorphosis of 6 to 8 months, her still trying to do the work, probably she lost her job, like all these things. We lost it the rest of the way. So we're not getting results, and that affects a lot of things because cortisol gets demonized, but really it's an important hormone for our metabolism, right? So, it's what helps us sleep at night. If you don't have cortisol, your sleep is crap. If your sleep is crap, your blood sugar is dysregulated. If your blood sugar is dysregulated, you're going to have all sorts of other problems.
What are like the biggest trip ups with cortisol? Like life sequences that happen.
So things that create cortisol are all sorts of things, right? Right down to exercise. Yeah. You can be exercising in a good way, but 4 miles every 4 minutes or whatever you're doing. Like that
set the record.
No matter how healthy Chris is, you are releasing cortisol at that point. Which is cool I use this analogy all the time. If your stress bucket is relatively empty, cool, you can fill it up a little bit with some stuff. But if you are working a crappy job or you just lost your job or your marriage sucks or your kids drive you nuts or whatever it may be, and you add exercise and diet, those are both cortisol. They elicit cortisol response. And you know what else elicits cortisol response? This thing, the blue light on your phone.
Nonstop.
So, if your bucket is just constantly being filled, eventually it's going to overflow. And so with this, you see a lot of things. You see sleep dysregulation. You see people waking up at, anywhere from 1 to 3 in the morning and can't go back to sleep.
I get that. Yeah. I get a few clients like that.
Yeah. You see people getting wired at night and they can't fall asleep. Right. And the reason for this is like, you'll see a normal human cortisol pattern. I know we're on camera here, but a normal human cortisol pattern kind of has a little bump at like 3 a.m. That's kind of like where it's going to start priming you to wake up in the morning with your circadian rhythm. And then it kind of goes down and lets you rest a little more. And then it peaks and that wakes you up. And part of that peak is also to get your blood sugar going, to get you mobile again. And throughout, it peaks until about usually like noonish. Excuse my reptar arm here. It peaks until usually about noonish. And then it begins to decline for the evening so that you can kind of make a switch from cortisol over to melatonin and all the sleep chemicals. And then you can go to sleep and it's declined. And then the whole thing starts over again, right? If your cortisol is peaked all day long, when is it supposed to go down to start getting you ready for bed? Right.
Yeah.
You gotta make time for that.
Oh,
you
for sure.
You have to. And I think that's probably one of my biggest issues that I've ever had in my life. But typically, it's like life events that kind of are offsetting that put me into that situation of like, I'm just gonna work. I get into a situation where I'm like, I gotta like escape this crap that's going on and not deal with it. I think that's pretty normal for anybody.
And then like then now you look at the current climate and you see this big time in the fitness industry. People are pumping out cortisol constantly. Their sleep is crappy. They wake up in the morning. They take a scoop of 300 milligrams of caffeine. They drink a couple cups of coffee and they head to the gym.
Yep.
And then their cortisol is like, whew, straight. I mean, it's pumping through the roof. And next thing you know, it like takes a nosedive at noon when it's actually supposed to start going down, but you've been like up here forever. And then they're like, oh, I'm so tired. I need more coffee. I need more stimulants, more stuff to get me going. Next thing you know, your body is like riding this freaking cortisol peak for so long. And it takes a period of time for this to happen where your body stops making it. That was me post-show in 2019.
Your cortisol levels were
bottom out. And let me tell you what, when this happens, it's bad because you do not give a crap about anything. Like there were times I'd be like, I could step out in front of a semi and it wouldn't hurt me. I wouldn't even care.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't get excited about things. I like if somebody like tried to scare me, I would just be like it
Whatever.
just I was so flatline. My sleep was awful. I could not sleep to save my life.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. Like we're talking, I know this is really embarrassing, but I used to work on people's teeth. I had a day job. I would be falling asleep while I was working on people. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Scary. Yeah. So then what would I do? I'd go into the freaking break room. I'd sign myself up with a couple cups of coffee and now we're good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but this is the state that a lot of people are in. Is it at that extreme? No, but they're working on it, right? So then, especially women, men are pretty not as fragile as women. They're pretty resilient, but women, because of reproductive hormones and stuff like that, are super, super prone to getting adrenal dysfunction. Now, there's a big difference between dysfunction and like straight on exhaustion, right? Yeah. But a lot of people are in this dysfunction state, and then they're overweight, they're unhappy, they don't feel good, they go hire a trainer for 6 days a week and they start starving. And guess what?
It gets worse.
Yeah. So this is where I won't work with someone unless I have a baseline. And what we don't realize is that cortisol also robs us of all of our estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all the things. So the way I can...
your hormones start flatlining.
Yeah, and then you're in trouble. So like we don't realize. So everything starts at cholesterol, by the way, which cholesterol is a good friend of ours and not demonized like some of the allopathic climate wants to say, right? And so everything starts with cholesterol. Then it moves. Fats. Yeah. Then it moves down into, I mean, I'm going to skip a few here for the sake of time, but essentially you can go one of two roads: cholesterol, and then you have DHEA, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, all that stuff. Or you have, it kind of goes down into progesterone or cortisol. Okay. Cortisol down over here. So one of two paths can happen when you're under stress. You can be not stressed and your cholesterol can be turning into estrogen, testosterone, or progesterone, or you can be that person that is stressed through the roof and you're producing cortisol, even if you're just running and everything else is fine. Just saying.
You mean running every 4 hours, 4 miles, not eating out here, but jumping in the lake.
You know, and then next thing you know, you're in that chronic state. You're no longer creating these hormones that are essential to body composition regulation, your mood, like progesterone and serotonin are tightly linked. Like, why? I mean, we won't get down this rabbit hole today because it would take way too much time. But why do you think women that take birth control are depressed?
Because their progesterone hits the floor. Yeah. Yeah. And then their serotonin crashes, right?
Yep. And the next thing you know, they're like, well, we got a pill for that.
And,
you know?
Yeah. What birth control are you on? Yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay. So we got another pill for it.
Yeah.
Here's this. Okay, here.
And it's awful. But the other thing you see is women, like especially competitors,
What about somebody who is on birth control and then gets off birth control? Does it?
It takes a very long time to balance.
It does.
Yes. Yeah.
Like how long? Like obviously ballpark. You know.
I mean, there's some really good coaches I know that I think they are getting some people going pretty well in like 6 months, and maybe those are the good cases. I mean, you do only see the glamour on social media, but I know some of these people personally. I'd say a good solid year. Okay. If you're really being advantageous about what you're doing to also get it corrected.
Gotcha.
So,
well, and then check this out. So say if you're in a relationship with somebody who was on birth control and they got off birth control and then they flatline and they're like, I'm unhappy, and they can't figure out day to day. and they don't realize it was the birth control, and they're just kind of blaming the relationship or the life or whatever it might be when it's not that.
The funny part is how many women go into the gynecologist. I mean, you guys have never had to go in there, but how many women actually go in there and they're like, oh, my mood is just not good. And they're like, well, we'll just put you on birth control. And it's like, no, this is not how this works.
Destroy the whole relationship.
It's I see this frequently with women. Their progesterone is in the tank, and their progesterone, it keeps you from being bloated. Actually, it helps you with a lot of digestive stuff. Same with estrogen, but your mood is awful. And the other thing is then when I'm working with competitors, they don't have their cycle. Their progesterone is like nil, and when they do get it back, it's still, their cycles are awful because their progesterone is so low. So, and then they're like, oh man, my cycle is awful. But it's like, or you see women that don't have, like they have really painful cycles and maybe a lot of stress in their life. And it's like, oh, well, your progesterone's low. Yeah. It's not facilitating.
They don't look biologically. They look at everything outside of what's going on. Yeah. That's kind of hard.
Oh, and the thing is it's, you got to figure women's hormones are different at different times in their cycle too. So
yeah. Could you imagine? So like, all right, I'm sorry. I keep,
you're good.
Here, but like be the scenario that I stated, and then like getting out of the relationship because you think it's a relationship and this and that, and then all of a sudden after that year mark, you're starting to come back up, and you're like, it was that stupid, and then it just like destroy.
It's, I mean, there's a lot of sad stuff. There's a lot of sad stuff that revolves around that, but I mean, honestly, you'll see, and I get this one. This is the most funniest one ever. Is women are like, well, my doctor asked me, why would I want to have my hormones checked? They change all the time. Yeah. They don't realize, well, they if you are in okay health and you have a regular menstrual cycle, your hormones peak and wane at certain times. And if you do your labs at a certain time of the month, if you have a consistent cycle, you can actually know where your cycle should be and where your hormones should be. So there are ways to understand them clearly. Those guys just don't suggest that. But for a female, it's 21st day of your cycle if you're having a regular menstrural cycle. Really, really important. I mean, males are a lot easier. If somebody wants to run their labs, I'm like, sweet, go get them done. It's easy. So, but I've seen some really crazy things. And then you get into like hormone, like I work with a lot of bodybuilders, for example, males that have really messed themselves up. Right. Yeah. And I've had males. Man, I've had males sitting in my chair, like, they listened to their bro who put them on large amounts of testosterone or other things beyond testosterone. And then they're like, oh, well, you've got to take an estrogen blocker because an estrogen blocker is going to keep you from aromatizing, right? Estrogen is very important for males too. If you don't have estrogen and you block it, you're going to have some big problems with regular function, the kind you like to have. Also, your cholesterol is more than likely going to go through the roof. Yep. There's a lot of big things there. So anyway, this is my nerd space. I could go crazy on this stuff, but stress is huge. I mean, if I could say on this podcast, give one word of advice, it would be like, decrease your stress. And sometimes that's not something. It's a choice,
right?
Yeah.
To an extent.
I think so.
I personally think so. Just like looking into psychology as much as I have, it's a choice.
Yeah, it is. And some of us have been running in that red line zone for so long, it's actually hard to take a step back and be like,
all right, I need a break.
Okay. I mean, so please think of your life in the stress realm like a bucket. Like, okay,
balance.
Do I want to exercise? Keep that bucket as empty as possible. Right. Okay. What is critical in our life? And that's, not to get off onto a rabbit hole here, but I have been coaching since like 2016-ish. Little things, and then I got real crazy, but I had a job at the same time, and I worked 12-hour shifts, and it was the most stressful job of my life. I did it for 14 years. It never changed no matter who I worked for. And I had way too much stress going on in my life. And I thought that I needed to work hard and have that job in order to have money so we could go do fun things like ride dirt bikes and snowmobiles and de-stress part, And I thought that I needed that. And then when I got to that, and you'd have all these people that would go do these speeches, or even like Goggins and Jocko, they'd be like, if you don't like it, change it, And I'm like, yeah, you jerk, you can't change this because guess what? You don't have a family to feed, or you make this excuse for yourself, right?
You can't make that
excuse. And it was funny because here, Connie Epiphanies again, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, if I'm working myself off to be miserable 90% of the time, just so for 5% of the time, I can go ride my dirt bike or take my family on trips. Why couldn't I work less and be happy, work less for 90% of the time and like, you know, and
enjoy those.
Yeah, you know, and that was when I was like, light bulb. It was like, how much minimum do I have to make in order to survive?
Yeah, how much
right
minimum?
And that's what but I also find that there's this place. So then I jumped. I was like, oh, please God, let the net appear because we're jumping. And I had a pretty large coaching base at that point. So and everybody was like, why are you doing both? Like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
You know, and I was training people and it was crazy. And I was like, okay, so
one or the other.
I split on my job. I had a particularly bad day. I came home and my husband's like, how much longer are you going to do this? And I was like, I think tomorrow I'm going to put in my notice. And he was like, no, are you kidding me? You know, like are you actually going to do it?
What's going to happen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And now it's kind of funny because I work from home and I think all his people that he works with think that he's having to support me, but it's kind of funny because I made more money than he did last year. So anyway, so, and I think it was because I made it out of the health choice. Mm-hmm. And it was like, what can I do? Because at that time, my health was still in a crisis. We're talking 55 pounds up. I have a bad autoimmune disease. It was out of control. Were bad things, right?
Right.
And anyway, so I made that decision, was the best decision I ever made. And now I try to make all my decisions around that. Like, what's going to keep that stress bucket as little as possible? Mm-hmm. And even in this last powerlifting prep, it was not a joke. It was hard and it was very hard to balance. And it was still probably a little more stress on my system than I should have placed on it.
Yeah.
But I thought of everything I just had that bucket in my mind. And I was like, okay, so if I'm really training hard, I'm stressing really bad with that stress on my system with it. If I sleep perfectly and if I do this, eat perfectly, and if I keep all the other stresses down, then we can have that bucket half full and we're still safe.
Right. And so what I'm gathering mostly in like all these situations, this what makes you a great coach. And honestly, myself too, is the consciousness level that we have of like seeing these things. Like, I am not my brain and my body. I can control it and do what it needs. Right.
Right.
And I think putting that into that's what I love about this podcast is that you're kind of exemplifying that. Like, anything is possible. You can fix whatever's going on as long as you look at it like it's not a problem. It's not you. You're not stuck in it.
Well, and things are changing habits and things like that. It's never easy, but anything that we have ever wanted to do, the successful people are the ones that do the not easy shit. That's just how it is.
And the trip along the way, you learn things and you see things and you experience things and you meet people. So guess what? Why not live?
Well, and this is the funny part about, my last contest prep, we briefly touched on the fact it went south really bad at the end, to a really bad medical extent. And, you know, it's like, okay, well, everyone's like, man, that was awful. Why would you have done that to yourself? And I was like, well, I didn't really mean to at the time, even though I kind of knew in the back of my head we were headed that direction. But the bullheadedness and the fact I thought I needed something I really didn't need. But the thing about it is now I can use that. I learned so much from that. Yeah. Like I learned all about hormones. I learned about all these things. Yeah. And I use that every day to help other people not have that same problem.
Yeah, exactly. And then that ripples on to more and more people because they talk as well.
Yeah.
Or you talk about it on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and that's the thing, experiencing life, but doing it in a sense of like, I'm going to fail and things aren't always going to be perfect, but I need to do what I can to handle the situation or fix the situation.
Right.
Like actually put the work in.
And when you get a flat tire, don't stab the other 4.
Yeah.
You know, put the spare on and keep going. Exactly. It sucks to be on the side of the road changing into that spare, but let me tell you, it's better than walking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, no, I agree with that.
Got anything to add?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess to conclude.
Just a lot. I'll have to watch this back and like take it all in because I'm like,
there's a lot going on. No, yeah.
Well, I'm not a good 1 hour interview. Sorry.
I know.
No,
and we ran into this with with Colton last week. We talked for another 15, 20 minutes after we shut it down. But like there's a lot of information to put out. So
and I mean, if people have questions, they can always head on over. My social media is probably best. My YouTube's actually pretty good too. But you know,
what is your podcast?
So my podcast is the Fit Farming Food Mom, and that might kind of sound hilarious, but we live on a farm. And when I originally started this journey, it was a blog, and I was typing up all my recipes and all the things I was doing on my blog because everybody wanted to know about it. And I wanted something that was like a looked cute in a logo and like, how do you do this with farm life and all the, and so it's the Fit Farming Food Mom. And it's available on every platform. Same on YouTube. And I'm Connie Begani on Instagram.
I'll make sure to put in the description and stuff
follow
so they
her,
can just go
follow her up, look at her podcast.
I try to put some informational things out.
There is a lot of informational things. Yeah. It makes people aware.
Yeah.
I mean, like just you talking about that whole birth control and the serotonin levels with the estrogen,
Yeah.
Or progesterone. Yeah. It's just like, oh, wow. I just saw a lot of things happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's where we get, with my job, it's like a never ending rabbit hole, right? Because the things that influence the other things, it never ends. It's like, I learn something new every day.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I mean, if you're not learning something new every day, there's a problem, So I know lots of people that don't get continuing education and they're not trying to further themselves. And I had this conversation with a client of mine the other day because I let him go. He was dickering with me on prices, and I was like, I said, you know what? These are my prices. This is why. I said, if you want to find someone else, I'm sure there's somebody cheaper. Are they going to have the credentials I have? Maybe not.
Maybe not as experienced. Maybe not have credentials.
But
maybe haven't researched what it is.
This is what my rate is, and this is why. And I put way more into this than most of the people I know. So
exactly.
This is what it is. So, you're always learning, and I'm sure there's 8 million things more I'm going to learn before I get done with this, especially working with human beings, right? I'm lucky I have these people let me coach them and experiment on them, but
and like as coaches, I think that's our best way to put, like, just embrace life. I think if you get anything out of this podcast, embrace life, go experience it, and don't be afraid to think outside of the box, because there could be potential of it could be anything. And don't just give up. Like, well, I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught in a rut, but that ultimately,
go figure it out.
It's just going to make slow even slower.
Exactly. Go figure it out. You still have to live your life.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I think it'll be nice once this setup is temporary. Like, we're looking to try and get, more of a situated spot going, and a lot to figure out, but that way we can do, this could obviously go way more long, almost an hour,
couple hours.
It could easily go more. So I think it'd be cool after we get
definitely want to have you
figured
back
out.
Okay,
have back on, and we'll do
dive into the weeds.
Yeah.
I
think so.
Really
absolutely. I know a lot of people on my Instagram or a lot of my clientele will benefit from this.
Yeah.
So
sweet.
Very, very thankful for you.
Well, thanks for introducing me to your friend today.
Yeah. Didn't even tell her it was a podcast. What are we doing today? She just led. She's like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about? We're doing a podcast.
Turned on the lights, computer on, hit record.
Perfect.
It's the beauty
Completely
of podcasts
organic.
and stuff. It's just fun to sit down and, we met now.
Yeah. Nice
meet new people.
You. Yeah. Nice to
talk about just anything and everything. So.
Sweet.
All right. Well, that's a wrap.
Sweet.
All right, guys. If you liked it, if you actually liked the information, you got something from it, like it, subscribe, share it with people that might benefit from this information. That would be great too, just so we can make the world a better place. All right. See you guys.